Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Dennis. So we have a Ryzen 5 3600. We did it on a test bench. I'm going to take it finally off the test bench, put it into a case that I've already had, which is the Fractal Design Focus G. I'll go over all the parts we're using, and then we're going to put it all together and have a look at it at the end. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to go over our parts real quick. So of course the motherboard we've got here is the MSI MPG B550 Gaming Carbon Wi-Fi B550 motherboard. Really good board. We've already done it in its temperature test, all that kind of good stuff. We have our Montech CPU air cooler. Now, the crazy thing is, they asked me to do a review on it, and yet I can't find this product anywhere. So if you can find it, let me know where you found it, because I would be really interested to know. Anyhow, underneath this right here, we have our M.2 already installed. That was our Western Digital Blue SN550 NVMe 1 terabyte. Okay, I'm going to use the an older GTX 980 graphics card. That's all I could find these days. We have our Corsair HX 1050 power supply. Our memory, which is Corsair DDR4 2x8 gig 16 gigabyte 3200 megahertz. It's the Corsair Vengeance LPX memory, and of course we're using our Ryzen 5 3600X processor. Or sorry, no, it's the Ryzen 5 3600 processor. So that's all our parts. This is our case. I reviewed this in the past. In fact, I reviewed pretty much everything except for maybe the graphics card. We're going to get the side panels off. One thing I like about this is it has room for a couple DVD drives, which I am actually going to use. I've got one. Why not put it in there? Until manufacturers start to put USB drives in here, I might as well use what the case provides for. So DVD drive it is. So we're going to get this. We're going to move all this out of the way. We're going to put it in our case, and I'll show you how all that goes in. Okay, so the first couple things I'm going to do is get the side panels off and put in the power supply. After I take everything out that's in there, like box with all your standoffs, all that kind of good stuff. So we'll start with here, and this should just come right off. Acrylic side panel. That was doing a lot of good, so I'll take it off. That's our little box of goodies. And we'll have to take that one out in order to get at them. We'll use this a little bit later on. Put this back in. Actually, is that in upside down? No, maybe not. Anyhow, okay, so that's out. We'll have to make room for our graphics card, our DVD drive. It does have 3 fans in the front, in case anybody's wondering. So let's get the other fan off. No, I'd already loosened it before that happened. Just in case you're wondering. Now, something with this case is you don't have a whole lot of room for cable management, so you have to be creative, as I like to put it. But it'll work. I've built in them before. I do like more space on the back, or at least some other cable routing options. This is probably the last time I'll use this case, but it will fit our purposes. So let's get on and put in power supply. You'll notice there is no power supply shroud, so everything you do, you're going to have to be pretty good at cable management just to make sure you can hide everything. So keep that in mind. So our power supply is semi-modular, so first thing you do is I'm just going to set it inside. You can get all our cables out of the way. And this is another problem with this particular case. There's not a lot of room for your cables. Now I'm going to feed these through the back anyway, so it's not terrible, but it doesn't give you a lot of room. So it does have a little bit of room. I'm going to see if I can move this hard drive cage, because I'm probably not even going to use this, but anyway, we'll see what I can do. Feed the cables through the back and all that kind of good stuff. Actually, I'm going to do that now. I'm going to feed the cables through. I'm going to take this back out and feed it through the back, and that might make things a little easier. That should free it up a whole lot more than what it was. And we're just going to have to play with this a little bit. Again, one of the things I did not like about this case the first time. So why I bought a second one? Well, it was on sale and it was cheap. So there you go. That was the reason. No other really good reason for using it. But before we go too far, I do want to see if I can move this here, but we'll get the screws in the back in here first, and then we're going to have a look at that. Okay, so I've just lined it all up, loosely put the screws in. You don't want to over tighten and put one in, then you can't move it around. So make sure you get all your holes lined up, and then you can just go in and tighten your screws. Doesn't take a whole lot, very quick. That one's a bit tight, but that's okay. Just means it's going to stay on there. And finally. Okay, so that's not going nowhere. So power supply's in. Cables, as you can see, are all sitting in here until we need them. So the next thing I'm going to do, actually, because I'm using a DVD drive, I'm going to put that in first. Then I'm going to put it in my motherboard. But before I do any of that, I'm going to see if I can get this hard drive cage either moved or at least moved over a little bit to the right. I mean, I know the reason they do it is because if you're going to put a radiator in the front here, it gives you that extra room, but I don't need it. I don't want it. I don't have any intentions of putting radiator in this at this time. And if I do, I'll probably put a 240 up here. I do believe that'll fit. So, yeah, back in a minute. So, turns out this does move. These 4 screws here are what's holding it in place. So I'm either going to completely take it out, maybe not put it back in, or if I can move it, that's what I'll do. I don't do this very often actually, but given the room in there, I want more room to work in there. And it helps down the road if I want to go in and mess with stuff or change cables or whatever the case might be. It's nice to have the extra room to get in there. And if I can't rearrange it, which I do believe I should be able to. So, as you can see, it will come out now, but I want to see if I can move it somewhere else. So as it turns out, these 4 screws that were down here, I was able to take them off. I'm going to see if I can remove there is one more holding it in place on the inside, so it's going to be on the other side here. So I'm going to get that one out, and then this whole thing should be able to come out. So let's move these out of the way for now. So why was there only 3? Oh, there's 4. Okay, so we're going to set it back up. And we can see it's right here, holding in place. And it looks like it'll move over, so we're going to try and do that. So it should be this one right here. So let's take this drive cage off. There we go. And it's out. So let's see if we can reposition it. So if I can move it almost right over by the fans. And then there is a hole. There's a hole right down here for this one to go into. So we're going to put that back in. And that gives us quite a bit more room, especially since it's going to block the fan on the bottom a little bit. But it'll still blow air into the hard drives if I decide to use them a little bit later on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Put the 4 screws on the bottom back in. And we'll continue on the build. Okay, so when you put in the screws, the one on the inside that you take out, put that in last. Put these 2 on this side in first. And then you're going to have to kind of, because this kind of pushes out, push that one in, line it up, and then put your screws in. And then once you got them all in place, you can tighten it down. And that's going to give you a lot more room. I'll show you in a second here. And you'll see how much more room it gave me on the inside. And it's substantial. And I'll show you why it makes a difference as well. So I got to do that screw in the back, but I'll get there in a minute. But look how much more room there is now. Because remember, it was right tight up against here. So I gained an inch, at least an inch. So gaining in that extra inch, it's going to make life a little easier for doing your cables and all that kind of good stuff. So we have this one last one to put in, and then we're good. And we still have access to putting in our hard drives, all that kind of good stuff. This one's got moved a little bit, but we'll fix that afterward. Still think that's in wrong, personally, but Let's have a look here. I think it should go this way. Okay. Anyway, I'll figure that out in a minute. Because I don't, it should be like this one. I think they should be the same. So something's a little bit off. Maybe I haven't got it lined up or whatever. Anyway, I'm just going to do this screw here now. Should be able to just go right in, provided I'm lined up here properly. Yep. That's it. Good to go. So let's go get my DVD, put it up top here, and we'll progress on. Okay, so it's just a matter of reaching inside here. There's a couple little tabs. You just push them out. That comes out. And then you have room for your DVD drive. Okay, make sure when you put it in, it's up the right way. And it's just going to slide right in. And then you're going to have to fasten it with a couple screws on the inside to keep it nice and flush. Haven't seen that in a while, have you? Me neither. But I like to have it in any case. I actually look for this in cases just for now because I just like having it. I know they got rid of it. People don't use it that often. I use it more often than maybe most. So I like to find a case that I can do that. So there's a couple holes on the side, on both sides. Put a couple screws in there, fasten it down, and it's in there. So it won't come out. You drop it. That'll probably survive everything else. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that, and we'll move on again. Okay, so flush mounted. A couple screws just to hold it in place. And a couple more here. That's it. That's all you got to do. So the next thing I'm going to start doing now is basically putting in my motherboard. Now, one thing to notice, there's only one standoff comes in this case. The rest are all down in the package that you get. So you're going to have to put them all in depending on the size of your motherboard. Okay, so a couple things to keep in mind. Depends on your motherboard. Like this has markings for ATX and micro ATX. So when you're putting in your motherboard, this indicates where you want to put them. Okay, so whatever this letter is beside them, that's where you want to put your standoffs. So go ahead and do it accordingly. So something to keep in mind, because my motherboard's an ATX, I'm putting in everywhere where it says A. So A for ATX, M for micro ATX. Now, in some cases, you might get confused because it says A and M. All that means is that regardless of the motherboard, whether it be a micro ATX or an ATX, that is going to be the same spot where you're going to put your standoff. So don't be worried about it. Put it in there, tighten on. Now, what they give you in the package is they give you a thing to tighten the standoffs down. Do not over tighten them. If you over tighten, you'll strip them. You're going to have all kinds of problems. So this little tool right here helps me to make sure these are on nice and tight. That was already on, by the way. And there's another one I knew right there. And there'd be like 3 on top. Once those 3, so basically 9 in total are all in, then we're ready to put in our motherboard. Okay, so before I put the motherboard in, these cables might get in the way, so it's time to take this right off. These are all your front panel connectors and everything for all your switches. So I'm just going to feed those out the back. That way nothing is in the way. So we're going to place our motherboard in. You can lay it down, stand it up, whatever method works best for you. If you had an I/O shield, you would put it in the back here. Our motherboard has it pre-installed, so you don't need to worry about that. Now, something else is this standoff is great, but on a lot of motherboards today, you're not going to be able to see this going in. So that kind of is something that, I don't know, I'm not sure how they can get around that. Except maybe leave a hole in the M.2 so you can see where the heck the thing goes. I don't know. Somehow. Anyhow, all we're going to do now is take our motherboard, line it up. So it's going to have to carefully go in. You can see it's tight. It's tight. And you're going to be lining up everything on the back as well. So I'm going to get a couple screws in there to hold that in place, and then I'll show you everything else. Okay, so once you've got a standoff here, and I usually put one up in the top here, you can go ahead, put all your standoff screws in, the ones that hold it in place, and then you'll be able to move on to the next step. So So it doesn't take much, just put it in there nice and light. Don't over tighten, because if you over tighten it too much, you may have problems when you go to take it off to replace it or upgrade it, whatever it might be. You may have problems in that area. Once it snugs down, you're good. So just something I want to mention that I did. I did take the fan off because it was easier to pick it up this way and just insert everything. So when you're looking at the back, you can see how nicely flush that is. Your antennas, of course, are going to go on here, and you got lots of USB and sound and all that kind of good stuff. And, you know, everything that's on the motherboard, which we've already reviewed before, so I'm not going to go over it now. We have a graphics card to put in, route all our cables, and but basically that's the really hard part. The only other hard part is going to be down here when you do your front panel connectors. Okay, I'll try and go over that real careful so you can see it, and that'll be really the hardest part of your build, to be quite honest. And of course, if you're wondering, because you have an M.2 drive in there, there are no cables. There's nothing to plug in. So unless you're plugging in like a hard drive or another hard drive down here, 3.5 inch, you won't have any cables. Everything is just nice and clean. So you can determine whether you want a couple M.2 drives and leave it at that, or whether you need this or not, which in most cases you don't. I just happen to want to have it, and whether you want to add more hard drives later on. And that pretty much will take care of everything. So now we're going to feed our cables from the back. Our 8 pin's going to go up on the top, and our 24 pin's going to go on this side here. That's going to be the first thing I'm going to do. Okay, so the next step in the process is usually take your power supply, find the nearest spot that you want to feed it through, and just bring it across. Now, this is going to be your most difficult cable in terms of cable management, okay, because I'm going to put it up in here, which will tuck it away nicely as long as I leave it like that. But that makes a problem later on putting this case on, because you can see it's not very thick. So it will impact it. So you're going to find one of your stand downs, okay, one of these little standoffs, not standoffs, tie downs. Okay, find one of your tie downs, tie that in there nice and tight, and you shouldn't have a problem. So the next thing you want to do is route your CPU cable, which I do believe. So CPU, make sure it says CPU on it. Okay, it's going to go up on the top and just bring it in there. That one probably won't stay, so hang on to that. Come back. Don't worry about anything else right now. Excellent, unless your cables are getting in the way. And this cable is going to go right up in here. Okay, so you have a little tab. Okay, so line that tab with the tab that's on the bottom down here. Now you have an 8 and a 4 pin. You only need to put in the 8 pin. If you have a 4 pin, you can put that in too. It just helps you if you want to overclock. Okay, so I'm going to put this, the tab is on the top, so that's how we have to orient it. Okay, so once you've got it lined up, you're just going to push it until you hear that click in place. There, you know that little click. It wasn't very loud, but now if you want to try it, and I do recommend doing this, pull it. Just pull on it a little bit. If it comes out, then it was never in properly in the first place. So now we're going to do our 24 pin for our power, which is going to go up here. You can see a little tab on that as well. So our tab is on this side. You have your tab here. So make sure that tab is on the outside. It'll go in. Hear that click again. And don't be afraid to just be real sure it's in there. We want to leave this clear for your USB Type-C. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to tie that down out of the way. I don't know, maybe I could have brought it in up the top. I'm going to bring it up the top. I'm going to undo this, bring it through the top, and maybe this will tuck out of the way better. So we've got our cable running here for the 24 pins for power, and up here for the 8 pin for CPU power. So now we got the rest of the cables to figure out. The case cables. All right, so all these ones here, we'll have to figure these all out. They're pretty straightforward. You got your audio, your USB, USB 3.0, and all your front panel connectors. So HD audio, or sorry, HD LED, your power positive and negative for PLED, power switch, reset switch. Now, it will vary depending on your case, but that's what we have in this one, but we'll do that one later on. So the next thing I'm going to do is start hooking up some of our cables. So I'm going to go get some SATA cables and show you where all that goes. So we're going to start hooking up the DVD drive. I know some of you may not have seen this for a while. So basically you need the SATA. Okay, so the SATA power connector from your power supply. You see it's got that little L shape, and that's going to go on the back up here. All right, and then you have your SATA cable, which is going to get your connected to your motherboard. This one here is going to go, all right, that one's going to go on your DVD drive because it goes at an angle like that. And then the other one's going to go straight to your motherboard. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to connect those. But in order to show you what the connector looks like, I'm going to show you that. I'll bring out one of the other DVD drives just so you have an idea of what I'm talking about here. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. So that's the SATA that goes to your DVD drive or hard drive. They all have the same kind of connectors on them. So this one goes on here, the small one, it goes to your motherboard. So that's going to be this cable here. I'm just going to show you. Okay, so that L shape just goes in there, clicks on. Now once that clicks on, to take it off, you got this little tab here. So that's going to pull off. All right, that's how that one goes on. And for the power supply, okay, so that one's bigger. That's how you can identify it. You get the little L shape. And so you're going to look at the L shape on here, make sure it's going in the right direction. You can just put it there, line it up, and you're going to just push in. So you have the two cables on there, and that'd be it. So here's the thing. You got this up here. Maybe you want to add a hard drive later on. So you can put one up here and leave this one on the bottom, okay, to reach to your hard drive. So you use one cable. The other ones you don't need because it's a semi-modular power supply. You can remove that cable, or you can just tuck it away somewhere. So probably going to remove it and keep it somewhere else in the meantime. So I'm going to go ahead and connect those, and we'll get moving on. Okay, so I just wanted to get in here real close and show you what that looks like. All right, so there's our two cables. We have our SATA cable here. Okay, so now I'm going to plug that into the motherboard, and I'll show you where that goes. Okay, so we're going to take our SATA cable here. I ran it up, put it behind here, right? So it's going to be setting more in the background. And you can pick whatever one you want. It doesn't really matter that much. And you just find an empty slot and put it in. I tend to put it a little bit further down and just make sure that it's lined up. Okay. And it's going to just go in there like that. Again, we're going to tuck all these cables in the back, tie them up afterward. So that is this connected. There's no other hard drives here. Our hard drive for the case is done. So now we're going to do our front panel connectors and our basically all our case cables. And one of the things I want to show you is the fans on this, so you know where to plug them in. So let's turn this around. Hey, I know, it's a mess, right? Don't worry about it. All part of the plan. So down here we have all our cables just for our case, for our power, for our fans, I mean. All right, well, we'll tuck these out of the way after. So they are 3-pin, so they're not PWM controlled. And all you're going to do is take these ties off, and these will go into the motherboard. You can use a fan splitter if you wish, if you want to make it cleaner. That's totally up to you. And that's it. You can use a fan splitter or just plug it in to the motherboard, which is what I'll probably wind up doing. So don't worry about that right now. So our other cables for the case, I want to show those to you. So these are it right here. Like I said, you got USB 3.0, which we'll show you. I'll show you them all when we connect, don't worry. Your HD LED, sorry, your HD audio. Okay, so we've got our HD audio, which is going to go in. Usually goes right around there somewhere. This case doesn't have a lot of access, so we may have to kind of maneuver it a little bit. That's okay too. And our USB, which just goes to a USB port. So those are pretty much it as far as cables go. I don't think, and of course, our front panel connectors. Okay, I will show you where all of these go when I hook them up. Okay, don't worry, I'm going to show you that. in as much detail as I can. So I'm going to start hooking up all these cables till we get to the point where it's a little bit more cleaned up. And then we're going to plug that in. And then once I start plugging them in, I'll show you where they all go. And I'll show you how I kind of clean this up as much as I can as well. Okay, so first thing I did in here are 3-pin fans. Okay, there's fan headers here and here on this motherboard, so that's no problem. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the USB 3.0, which is just going to go right here. And then we're going to put on our front panel connectors. So I'm going to grab those. Okay, so one of the big things with this case is there's just a small little space down here. And you have to bring in your HD audio down through there. If you try to do it any other way, it will not reach. So it's something to keep in mind. You have a missing pin on the top, okay, on right there, and you have to compare that with this. So you have to make sure when you put that in, you line them up. And I've never seen it yet. When you put it in, you're going to see the HD audio is going to sit on top, okay? So it's going to go in like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it, and make sure we can show that to you as best I can. All right, so let's go ahead and let's plug that in. Okay, so it just goes on just like this. Okay, so the HD audio goes right here. Okay, right in the corner there, you can see the HD audio. It always faces up, unless there's some weird configuration. And it just goes on. Make sure you look for the missing pin and line it up the right way. Okay, so next is our USB. And you can find any USB slot. Check it, this little corner. See how you're missing, there's no pin. So you have to make sure when you're plugging it in, you plug it in the same way again. So right there. Okay, so hope you can see that. Again, we're going to have to mess with these cables as best we can to kind of tuck them out of the way. It's going to mess. It's a mess because this case honestly is not very well designed for cable management. Flat out going to say that. USB 3.0, you've got a little tab. You've got this here. So look for that little indentation, okay, which is always usually on the top. And you can put it right here. Now, I'm not going to put that in yet. In fact, I'm going to take out my USB, but that's where it's going to go, okay? And it just pushes in. But before I do that, I want to do these cables here. Otherwise, these kind of get in the way. So I'm just going to pull that back off, and I'm going to do our front panel connectors. So starting with our front panel connectors, all right, the way it goes is you have your power LED positive and negative. Those are going to be on the top left. And then you have your HDD LED, all right, it's going to be underneath of it. Then you're going to have your power and reset on the bottom. That's basically always the same. I haven't seen it change in years. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. But you can line them up 2 at a time, or you can put them on individually. How you choose to do it is up to you. Okay, so I like to put the HDD LED on first because it's easier to see. So there's our HDD LED, bottom left 2 pins. Your PLED positive negative are going to be positive and negative on the right of the next 2 pins on top of that again. And that's your HDD LED positive and negative, your power LED positive and negative. On to the right of that, and you're going to have your power switch and your reset. Reset on the bottom. It doesn't matter how you plug it in, it'll work. So reset and power on the top. That's it. All your cables are now in place. Now I'm going to plug in my USB again and tuck this up here a little bit. Look for the indentation and just push it in. And that's it. USB 3.0, USB 2.0, and your case cables are now complete. Okay, so now basically that's it. It's going to be a mess. No doubt about it. It's not going to look great. No matter what you do about it, it's just not going to look that great. So all we have to do now basically is all the cables in the back, tidy them up, put our sides panels back on and fire up, and hopefully everything's still working good. So we're going to progress. I'm going to go in the back, do all my cables, show you what that looks like afterward, and then we'll continue on. Okay, so it's all nicely tucked in. I try to tuck it in as much here as I could. But like I say, this case is one of the biggest design failures, in my opinion, of this case is its room for cable management. Like, this is going to push up against here, even as best as I can do this one, and tucking all these in, it's still, I know just from having done this before, but I just wanted to use up this case because I put it off for a long time. This will help, it'll get me in there. I'll be able to close it off, move to the front. The only thing I did differently, I fed a couple cables through here for the graphics card. Other than that, the backside's done. So I'm going to get the backside panel on. We're going to move to the front and we'll continue and finish it off. Okay, so you can see it's on. It's perfectly flush. You always like to rub your hand just along there, make sure everything's on right. So we're good in the back. Cable management's all done. Everything's plugged in. Okay, so no problems here. So we have to take these two slots, we have to remove them so we can fit in our graphics card. So I'm going to move the camera down so you can see this. Actually, yep, right here is where our graphics card is going to go. Okay, this is going to be pushed back. It'll pop up once it's in, and then you have to push it back down in order to take it out later on. So right now we're going to take these two slots here, remove them, put our graphics card in, and then hook up our PCIe cables. This just unscrews, okay? Be careful because it does want to fall out. So anyway, put your finger there to keep it. So, and now you're going to see that part falls down, which is not falling on anything but the power supply, so no biggie. They're not all like this. A lot of them, you have to twist them and break them out depending on your case. So now, all we're going to do is insert our graphics card. Okay, see this edges? And it's going to go in there. You get the little tiny one and the big one. Can't really go wrong. It's pretty foolproof, to be honest. And line it up. And you should hear that. Yep, see that click? That click means that little tab raised up and it's now held in place. So we have our two 6 pins, which are going to go in here. You have tabs in the bottom. So take your tabs, make sure those are on the bottom. You plug them in and you'll be good to go. So I'm going to tighten these back up. We're going to insert our cables. Okay, so we got our 2 screws in. I always push this up a little bit, tighten this. That way you don't have too much sag. It's in there nice and solid. The newer graphics cards, they're not as easy to work with. Sometimes you have to buy the sag bar because they have so much weight to them. But the old used card market is going strong and I'm able to get some of these. And so plug in your 6 pin. Like I say, this on the bottom. Simply push it in. I like to hold the back of the card, just call it me. And I will tighten this in here so it does look good. Oh, well, look better anyway. Same thing with this, PCIe, plug it in here. And now I'll tie all those off. Tuck these cables down here as much as I can. And we'll put our front panel on, and, or not, side panel, and see how it looks. I mean, it's not a thing of beauty, that's for sure, but functional. That's all we're going for here. Okay, so now we're at our final stage. Like I said, we can always add the hard drive. It's not going to get in the way. There is room in the back to connect the Sata connector and won't be a problem. Tuck these down. There's a bit of a snake's nest down here, but it won't affect anything. Airflow through here will still be good. And so let's put on our panel and get ready to fire it up. So this should go on here pretty simple. There's nothing in the front, at least, which is really where you need to be concerned. Because if that doesn't go on properly, well, then you're going to have a problem. And that's where these cases kind of irritate. Because it goes on, but it's just kind of like it fits on. But that's on there now. Actually, I guess I have to take that off. It's on the inside. I thought it was on... Oh, no, it's on the outside. So we'll take that off. We'll get the big... I should fasten that first. Do this first. Okay, so our side panel's on. Screws are in. And the big deal. So it doesn't look too bad. Actually looks pretty decent, really. You get the reflection of my other PC in the background there. And yeah, so let's power it up and make sure she still all works. Okay, showtime. Power button. Sure which one's which. Okay, there we go. It's turning on. Light for the DVD is on. Our lights on top are on. Everything inside is lighting up. And we see it's recognized the HDMI cable and it's coming up. So, another build successfully done. So, if you have any questions, send them my way. Let me know if you have any questions. Is this a great case? No, it's not. It's a good case. It works. It's more on the budget line of things. But you know what? When it turns on and everything works, it's pretty much all you can really count on is that it's going to do that. So I got to update the driver on this thing and all that kind of normal stuff. But that's all she wrote for this one. All right, everybody. So if you like that video, hit that like. If you don't, you know what to do. Don't be afraid to leave a comment down below. Hit that bell for future notifications. And if you're new here, think about subscribing. But our bottom line is it's up and running. Looked great. So if you have any questions, shoot them my way. Don't forget to give me a like if you like it. And thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.